Jeff, you wrote a book called Altruistic Armadillos to Zen-like Zebras. And I believe in the book you talk about your 100 favorite animals, and you did research about them. How was that book process for you? And I'm sure you learned a million things, but how was...
I did, yeah. That was, in a way, the most difficult book I wrote, because in order to... I mean, at first I thought, well, 100 animals, that's easy. But when you think about it, after you go through the first 5 or 10 animals, it becomes a little bit more tricky. You know, how much do I really know about all these other animals? So I had to purchase approximately 1,000 books on Amazon. I was living in New Zealand, so I had to buy 1,000 books in order to get the information for these books, because it's not the kind of thing you can find in a library in New Zealand. So I now have quite a wonderful library on these 100 animals. And I did discover a lot. I found that very interesting to me. You know, looking at things like silkworms and bees and things I hadn't really thought about, but that always intrigued me, certain kinds of spiders. There was a fascinating Australian animals that I didn't know very much about. So I found it actually fascinating to write, and I'm glad to see it's going to come out now in a new paperback edition.
Excellent.
What I find is that the less you know about an animal, the more willing you are to claim that there's not much to know. And the more you learn, the more complexity you begin to see. And as you see complexity, and as you begin to understand, you then develop a certain different attitude, including, of course, compassion. So that for me, I would never now willingly step on an ant. And you know, that wasn't the case before. So I find that, or looking at lobsters, for example. I've always been appalled by the way people think, well, fish and lobsters have no feelings whatsoever, don't feel pain. I never believed that, because it wasn't common sense. If you see a fish out of water and it's gasping and thrashing about, and you look in the eyes, you can see terror. But scientists for a long time had denied that. They've now shifted. They've recognized that fish do feel pain. In fact, there's a very elaborate literature on that in the last couple of years. And even lobsters, I believe now more and more people recognize, of course, they have something like a central nervous system. It's not just an instinct. It is something. And of course, they're elaborate animals. I mean, some of them live for 75 years. You would expect that many things have happened to them during the time. They're not machines. They're not rocks. They are living beings. So I think it really makes sense for us to regard every living being as something complex, as someone complex, I shouldn't say something, as someone complex. And the more we learn about them, the more respect we gain for them. So it's really only ignorance that allows us to say there's nothing there to understand.